The committee will come to order. The Oversight Committee exists to secure two fundamental principles. First, Americans have a right to know that the money Washington, through the IRS, takes from them is well spent. And second, Americans deserve an efficient, effective government that works for them. Our duty on the Oversight and Government Reform Committee is, in fact, to protect these rights. Our solemn responsibility is to hold government accountable to taxpayers, because taxpayers have a right to know what they get from their government. Our job is to work tirelessly in partnership with citizen watchdogs to deliver the facts to the American people and bring genuine reform to the Federal bureaucracy. Would you go ahead and hold on? I'll do it this way. Thank you. That's what I was looking for. Without objection, the Chair is authorized to declare a recess of the committee at any time. Without objection, so ordered. The committee meets today as we continue our effort to get the truth and the full truth on the obstruction by the IRS and the targeting of Americans because of their conservative political beliefs. When the IRS Commissioner, John Costigan, appeared before this committee in March, he promised that he would produce what this committee had made its top priority, all of Lois Lerner's emails. The Commissioner made these promises without any qualification or limitations. He even reiterated that statement to the ranking member when asked. Would you please go ahead and play the video for reflection and memory? I requested that you produce all of Lois Lerner's emails to this committee. She won't talk to us, so these emails are the next best substitute.
And all we're asking is, give us the emails.
Our subpoena says all of Lois Lerner's emails.
When we say all, we want every single email in the time period in the subpoena that was sent to you.
We're talking about Lois Lerner, all of her emails.
How long will it take you to produce Lois Lerner's emails that don't involve 6103 material from January of 2010?
And since Lois Lerner didn't comply with our questions, we need all those emails.
When you have people in positions of authority and responsibility that are expressing overtly political commentary on government email, I think we ought to be entitled to all of them.
Will you commit here today to provide all of the emails?
Yes, as I say, we've never said we wouldn't produce those emails.
Wouldn't it seem to me that if you want to provide all, and you said, and I take you at your word, that you want to provide all, that this would be something that you would go ahead and get off the table as quickly as possible?
Are you or are you not going to provide this committee all of Lois Lerner's emails?
We are already starting
or
that process. Yes, we will do that.
For the record, on behalf of people on both sides that have spoken, Lois Lerner's emails, all of Lois Lerner's emails, is the highest current priority of this committee, and it will remain so as long as I'm Chairman.
The gentleman, the Commissioner, has said he's willing to produce the documents. We've got almost every member now asking for documents.
February subpoena asked for all emails.
So I think you understand the committee views Lerner's emails as the highest priority.
So are you going to provide the documents for Lois Lerner?
Yes.
That were subpoenaed?
Yes.
Requested all of Lois Lerner's emails. Commissioner told us he would provide all of Lois Lerner's emails. We requested them over a year ago. We, in fact, subpoenaed them in August in order to make it clear that we were not being complied with. And again, a new one when you became Commissioner in February of 2014. Transparency clearly did not compel the IRS to tell the truth about Lois Lerner's lost emails. You worked to cover up the fact that there were missing emails and came forward to fess up only on Friday afternoon after you had effectively been caught red-handed. I'm struck that your acknowledgment of missing Lois Lerner emails came just 2 weeks after we had found some of them at the Justice Department. When you were looking for emails, one of the questions today will be, did you look at the Justice Department, where she had sent over 1.1 million documents, including some that were 6103, in other words, prohibited to be released documents? Did you ever give the committee the courtesy of a direct communication about missing emails after your false or misleading testimony? Instead, your staff shared a communication you made to a Senate committee controlled by the President's party. In your previous testimony, you had said it might take years, I believe 2 years, to deliver all of these emails. Welcome back. It hasn't been 2 years. Did you hope you could run out the clock on this scandal? Another question. Perhaps you thought Congress would never realize that there were missing emails until we found them at the Justice Department, perhaps. Commissioner, I called you to testify tonight because the American people deserve answers about what happened to Lois Lerner's emails and why the IRS hid this for years. This hiding did not begin, and I repeat, did not begin on your watch. Clearly, the missing documents were known by many people who have jobs at the IRS today, under your predecessor and your predecessor's predecessor. The fact that Lois Lerner's emails were ever transferred out of the exclusive custody of the IRS so that they could be lost or destroyed by Lois Lerner should concern all of us. The Federal Records Act, and we will meet tomorrow with the archivist, the Federal Records Act envisions that important documents will be maintained, not just for investigations of Congress, but in fact in perpetuity for the benefit of the American people. This event in history, like Watergate, like Teapot Dome, and like many other historic events, will be studied by future generations without the benefit of many of the thoughts and actions of Lois Lerner and others at the IRS as a result of your organization's failure. I subpoenaed you here tonight because, frankly, I am sick and tired of your game playing in response to congressional oversight. You, Commissioner, are the President's hand-picked man to restore trust and accountability at the IRS. You testified under oath in March that you would produce all of Lois Lerner's emails subpoenaed by this committee. Before you testified, you took an oath you will take again tonight to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Mr. Commissioner, at a minimum, you did not tell the whole truth that you knew on that day. You gave your commitment to produce all emails to the committee. You gave your word, sir, and we are just a little questioning what your word is worth if, in fact, you cannot enlighten us about what you know that is germane to our inquiry, whether or not it is explicitly asked. Do we have to grill you for days or weeks or months with every possible question, every possible way something could be asked? Or will the meaning of a question mean that you will, to the best of your ability, give us a true and complete answer? The American people have no trust in the IRS by comparison to just a few years ago. The American people have never loved the IRS. No one does love the organization that takes your taxes, and if they don't feel you treated them right, if they don't feel they got the right amount, they come back and have huge power over your lives. It's hard to love the IRS, but it should not be hard to trust the IRS. The American people deserve this agency, which was previously believed to be nonpartisan. They need to be able to trust that it will once again become nonpartisan, nonpolitical. Your agency has a set of rules for taxpayers and apparently another set of rules for themselves. The American people understand that if they cannot prove that they did the right thing in their tax return 5, 6, and 7 years ago, it will be disallowed and they will pay taxes with penalties. Well, in fact, you maintain only 6 months of records and then apparently count on people, good and bad, to maintain documents they think are important beyond that, and you do so without safeguards to protect the American people from the loss of those documents. Commissioner, tonight you will say that you have produced thousands of documents. It will be an impressive number. Quite frankly, that production is pushing a button and printing documents out and then having people scratch out almost everything of value in many cases. It is not producing the documents that you don't want to produce, the documents that embarrass you. The fact is, it's the last documents, not the first documents, that normally do us good. It's the documents we receive the night before we're going to depose somebody that often tell us things we've waited months or years for. I know tonight will be difficult, and it deserves to be difficult for both sides. We have a problem with you, and you have a problem with maintaining your credibility. Again, you promised to produce the documents. You did not. You promised to be forthcoming and candid. You are not. In our first meeting, my subcommittee chairman, who will also be making an opening statement, Mr. Jordan, irritated you because you felt he questioned your integrity. I defended you at that time, and I quite frankly gave you a bit of an apology that he meant no harm. It was just his style. Tonight, quite frankly, I wish I could take that back, and I wish I could say what I'll say to you tonight. You believe you earned trust before you came here, and it was yours to lose. I believe you needed to earn our trust, and you failed at that task. Either way, the American people do not believe the IRS is dealing fairly with them in this investigation. With that, I recognize the ranking member for his opening statement.
I want to get right down to the heart of the accusation Republicans have been making for the past week. It is interesting, Commissioner, that you've been accused of false testimony or misleading testimony, and been accused, actually, if it's false testimony, of committing a crime. What are we really saying? And what are the Republicans here saying? They're saying that Lois Lerner intentionally destroyed her emails, and that IRS officials helped her cover it up. Chairman Issa has been leading the charge. Here are some of the accusations he's made. June 13th, Chairman Issa suggested that this was, quote, a nefarious conduct that went much higher than Lois Lerner, end of quote. On June 18th, he said, quote, the emails of a prominent official don't just disappear without a trace unless that was the intention, end of quote. On June 19th, he said Ms. Lerner, quote, made the decision not to have this drive recovered, end of quote. And just this morning he said, quote, the Justice Department, the IRS, and the White House are interested in her succeeding in hiding what she's hiding, end of quote. Chairman Issa has made these accusations on national television without first obtaining a briefing from IT officials at the IRS who could have explained what really happened. And he made them before hearing from the IRS Commissioner. Mr. Koshinen testified last Friday before the Ways and Means Committee. And now that we have the facts, they tell a vastly different story. Truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth. Our committee has obtained no evidence to support Chairman Issa's claim that Lois Lerner intentionally destroyed her emails. To the contrary, we have now obtained contemporaneous evidence from 2011 showing the exact opposite. that this was a technological problem with her computer. Truth, whole truth, nothing but the truth. In Mr. Koshkinen's testimony last Friday, he walked through email after email from 2011 showing that Ms. Lerner sought help from IT staff at the IRS and that they went to great lengths to recover her data. But at the end of that process, they could not do so. Mr. Koshkinen also testified last week that the IRS took extraordinary steps, the extraordinary step of sending Ms. Lerner's hard drive to experts in the forensic lab at the IRS Criminal Investigation Division. But even they could not recover her data. The truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. On August 5th, 2011, Ms. Lerner received an email with the bad news, and it said this, and I quote, "Unfortunately, the news is not good. The sectors on the hard drive were bad, which made your data unrecoverable. I am very sorry. Everyone involved tried their best," end of quote. So if anyone wants the actual evidence of what happened in this case, now we have it. I asked unanimous consent that all of these emails from July 19th, July 20th, August 1st, and August 5th be entered into the official hearing record.
Without objection, any Lois Lerner emails that any member wants to put in the record be placed in the record in the next 7 days.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. These emails are all from 2011, well before any congressional investigation began. And they show that Ms. Lerner's computer crashed before she was informed that IRS employees in Cincinnati were using inappropriate search terms according to the Inspector General. I didn't say that, the Inspector General. Now, we can certainly take issue with why the IRS did not have backup tapes for this data. As Mr. Koshkinen testified last week, IRS policy in 2011 was to recycle backup tapes after 6 months to save money. He also explained that this policy was changed in 2013 to save all backup tapes. The fact is that there are long-standing problems with electronic record-keeping at federal agencies. The Bush administration lost millions of emails relating to the U.S. attorney firings, the outing of covert CIA agent Valerie Plame, and other investigations. Millions. In 2007, the White House spokeswoman, Donna Perino, admitted that they lost 5 million emails. 5 million. And she said at the time, quote, "We screwed up, and we're trying to fix it," end of quote. There's been some progress since then, but I've always believed we need to do more. I've always believed that we could do better. That is why nearly a year and a half ago, I introduced the Electronic Message Preservation Act. My bill would have required federal agencies to preserve emails records electronically. Although this committee voted on a bipartisan basis to approve my legislation, it has languished since then. And the House Republicans have declined to bring it to the floor for a vote. I believe our committee's work should be a responsible effort to obtain the facts and a responsible effort to find the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. It should not be an unseemly race against other Republicans to hold the first hearing in front of the cameras. And it should not be a ludicrous competition for some hyperbolic sound bites based on the least amount of evidence. In this case, Republicans have been trying desperately and unsuccessfully for more than a year to link this scandal to the White House. Rather than continuing on this path, I sincerely hope that we will turn to constructive legislation with concrete solutions to help Federal agencies run more effectively and efficiently. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. I might note for the record that in today's briefing, a briefing we asked for a week ago and were denied repeatedly, in today's briefing, after we sent interrogatory questions to the Commission, they said they would answer orally, which they did not. However, in today's briefing, when asked, can you assure us that Lois Lerner did not intentionally crash her hard drive, they could not verify that she did or didn't. Can you assure us that there was nothing nefarious in the loss? There was nothing nefarious in the loss by Lois Lerner of her emails, and your CIO could not answer definitively. So we still have a lot of facts to do.
May I be heard?
Of course.
Just before today's hearing, both the Democratic and the Republican staffs, as you said, had a briefing from the IRS Deputy Chief Information Officer, a career IT professional. While he was not involved in the original 2011 examination of Ms. Lerner's hard drive, he has reviewed documents surrounding the hard drive crash and the IT office's response to it. He was asked, do you have any reason to believe that Ms. Lerner intentionally crashed her hard drive? And he responded, and this is a quote, I have no reason to believe it and haven't seen anything that would say that she did that, no, end of quote. He also told the committee, and I quote, Ms. Lerner was insistent in trying to recover whatever documents she could. He further stated that I have no indication that there was anything nefarious about the loss of Ms. Lerner's emails, and quote, and when asked whether he was, quote, aware of anyone at the IRS intentionally destroying documents that are relevant to a congressional investigation, he said, quote, absolutely not, end of quote. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. I might note for the record, as I go to the Chairman of the subcommittee, that we sent you those interrogatories 48 hours plus ago, so we would not need to have an extensive, long hearing. It is likely that we will recess this hearing tonight and have you back after those interrogatories are fully answered, since the briefing today in no way addressed any of the interrogatories. With that, I go to the Chairman of the subcommittee, Mr. Jordan.
First, they denied it, Mr. Chairman. 2 years ago, Lois Lerner met with committee staff and said there's no targeting going on. Doug Shulman came in front of a congressional committee and says there's no targeting. I can assure you there's no targeting. Then they tried to spin it. May 10th, in an unprecedented fashion, before the IG's report went public, Lois Lerner, at a Bar Association speech with the plaintiff question, tried to put her spin on this story. Then they tried to blame someone else. Wasn't us, 2 rogue agents in Cincinnati. Then they attacked the messenger, the fact finder. They said the IG report is flawed. And now, Mr. Chairman, and now they hide the evidence. This is as old as the hills. Any third-rate B-actor crime drama follows the same script. The bad guy always says, he denies it, he spins, he blames someone else, he tells the police they got the wrong guy, and of course he always says, officer, I didn't throw the gun in the river. I don't know what happened to the murder weapon. I mean, Mr. Chairman, this would be laughable if it wasn't so serious. But here is one big difference between the common criminal on the street and this scandal. One huge, important difference. The bad guy on the street doesn't get to have his friends run the investigation. And I will talk about this until we get to the truth. The fact that Barbara Bosserman, a max-out contributor to the President's campaign, is running this investigation is a joke. It is wrong. The fact that the FBI leaks to the Wall Street Journal on January 13th of this year that no one's going to be prosecuted is wrong. And the fact that the President of the United States, the highest official in the executive branch, goes on national television and says there's no corruption, not even a smidgen, is wrong. The bad guy doesn't get to have his friends run the investigation like we see here. Here's the important point, Mr. Chairman. I've been hoping that someone in this administration would have the courage to step up and say it's time for a special prosecutor. In light of this fact pattern, it is time for a special prosecutor. Dallas Morning News said it today. They said it's time for one. 5 weeks ago, 26 Democrats had the courage to step up and vote with every single Republican and say it's time for a special prosecutor. I would hope, if nothing more happens tonight's hearing, I would hope that the guy who heads the agency where the targeting of people for exercising their First Amendment rights took place, I would hope that at a minimum, that guy, to show his independence, to show he really wants to establish some credibility back in this agency, would have the courage to do what 26 Democrats did 5 weeks ago and say it's time for a special prosecutor so we can get to the truth and get past this sham of an investigation that the Justice Department is doing. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
Would the gentleman yield to Mr. Turner?
I'll be happy to yield.
You're good? Okay. We now go to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Koskinen, you and those watching this hearing now understand that the stage is set. This is about theater. Fair play, presumption of innocence, civility, respect for an honored public servant who's serving this country yet again are out the window. Because there's an agenda that presupposes some guilt that is based in part on supposition, on paranoia, on conspiracy theory, all of which fires up the base of the other party and plays well on right-wing media outlets, at the expense, of course, of the truth, at the expense of any semblance of bipartisan cooperation, at the expense of trying to fix problems where we find them. You don't think for a minute, Mr. Koskinen, that part of the solution here is to provide the IRS with more resources to address its IT problem. You don't think for a minute that the solution contemplated might involve more resources for more IRS agents to try to deal with the backlog of tax-exempt applications, or to say nothing of money left on the table owed the government that could actually help reduce the debt. Because for ideological reasons, those are beyond the pale. And then we come to your honor, Mr. Koskinen. I first met you when we were worried about something called Y2K back in 1999, 1998, and 2000. And it was an IT problem. We were worried that at the stroke of midnight, 2000, our banking systems would collapse, red lights would go off, all of our computer systems would go awry, and so we had to make investments to make sure that didn't happen. And you were the Y2K czar. I saw then and I see now an honorable public servant who cared about his country. He served Republican as well as Democratic administrations and was cited explicitly, including in the Bush administration, for his exemplary service and for his integrity and personal honor. The fact that you would be subjected tonight to the barrage of an innuendo and accusation backed up by nothing for the purpose of political theater is, to me, reckless and disgraceful and brings enormous dishonor on this committee. And I want you to know personally, Mr. Koskinen, that there are a number of us who still honor your public service, who still respect your integrity, and who understand this dynamic and are willing to call it out for what it is. So I hope none of that shakes your faith in your value and in your years of service. And I hope you will continue your tenure at IRS to clean up what problems there are and to try to make the IRS a more accessible, more accountable, and more efficient agency on behalf of the U.S. taxpayers and this country. That's why you undertook a thankless assignment. Thank you for your service, Mr. Koskinen, and thank you for being here tonight. I yield back.
Thank the gentleman. I now ask unanimous consent that H.R. 1234 be placed in the record at this time. We now go to our one and only witness for this evening. John Costigan is the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service. Pursuant to the committee, all members are to be sworn. Would you please rise to take the oath? And raise your right hand. A little higher. Thank you. Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you will give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Thank you. Please be seated. Let the record reflect the witness answered in the affirmative. You're the only witness. You certainly have some explaining to do. Take such time as you need.
Thank you, Chairman Issa, Ranking Member Cummings, and members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to appear before you this evening to provide you with an update on recent IRS document productions to Congress. The IRS, over the past year, made a massive document production in response to inquiries from Congress relating to the investigation of the processing and review of applications for tax-exempt status as described in the May 2013 report from the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration. This committee has received, as noted, over 600,000 pages of materials redacted to protect taxpayer information. The tax writing committees have received over 835,000 pages of unredacted materials. As of last Friday, the tax writing committees already had more than 27,000 emails from Ms. Lerner's computer account and more than 18,000 emails from other custodians' accounts for which Ms. Lerner was an author or recipient. I understand that this committee and the other investigators were provided, beginning last fall, with copies of emails indicating that Ms. Lerner had experienced difficulties with her computer 3 years ago. So it should be clear that no one has been keeping this information from Congress. The IRS expects to complete its production of the remaining Lerner emails in unredacted form by the end of the month. As soon as possible thereafter, we will complete redaction of those emails and produce them to this committee. At that time, this committee will have all the emails, 43,000 of them, that we have from Ms. Lerner's computer and email account for the period January 2009 through May 2013. In addition, this committee will have 24,000 Lerner emails from other custodians' accounts for a total of 67,000 Lerner emails. In the course of responding to congressional requests, the IRS in February reviewed the email available from Ms. Lerner's custodial computer account, which was limited to search terms, developed in cooperation with the investigating committees, and identified the possibility of an issue because the date distribution of the email was uneven. It was not clear whether Lerner emails were overlooked, missing, or had other technical issues involved. IRS information technology professionals identified documents that indicated Ms. Lerner had experienced a computer failure in 2011. In mid-March 2014, the IRS focused on redacting materials for the non-tax writers and processing the rest of Ms. Lerner's emails for production. As we reviewed additional emails, the IRS review team learned additional facts regarding Ms. Lerner's computer crash in mid-2011, which occurred long before these congressional investigations opened or when the TIGTA review began. During this review, we learned that, as noted, in 2011, the IRS Information Technology Division had tried using multiple processes at Ms. Lerner's request to recover the information stored on her computer's hard drive. A series of emails available after all of Ms. Lerner's email was loaded this spring recounts the sequence of events in 2011. A frontline manager in IT reported to Ms. Lerner in an email on July 20th, 2011, and I quote, "I checked with the technician and he still has your drive. He wanted to exhaust all avenues to recover the data before sending it to the hard drive cemetery. Unfortunately, after receiving assistance from several highly skilled technicians, including HP experts, he still cannot recover the data," unquote. Ms. Lerner was told by email on August 1st, 2011, as a last resort, "We sent your hard drive to CI's, the IRS Criminal Investigation Division, forensic lab to attempt data recovery," unquote. In an email already read on August 5, 2011, Ms. Lerner was advised, quote, "Unfortunately, the news is not good. The sectors on the hard drive were bad, which made your data unrecoverable. I am very sorry. Everybody involved tried their best," unquote. In light of the hard drive issue, the IRS took multiple steps over the past months to assess the situation, ensure that no emails had been overlooked or lost during this investigation, is producing as much email as they have for which Ms. Lerner was an author or recipient. As the search for and production of Lerner emails was concluding, I asked those working on this matter to determine whether computer systems of the other 82 custodians had experienced any similar difficulties. After the IRS public report was delivered on June 13 to Congress and the Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration, it was determined last week that several additional custodians may have experienced hard drive failures during the search period. It's not unusual for computers anywhere to fail, especially at the IRS, in light of the aged equipment IRS employees often have to use, in light of the continual cuts in the budget these past 4 years. Since January 1 of this year, for example, over 2,000 IRS employees have suffered hard drive crashes. It's important to remember that a hard drive failure does not automatically mean that all or even any emails have been lost or cannot be reconstituted. We are still assessing what effect, if any, computer failures had on the emails of any of the custodians, although some custodians apparently lost no emails at all. The question is, what emails outside the agency prior to April 11, 2011 are not in the 24,000 lowest learner emails sent to other IRS employees during that period? Last week, I understand the White House and the Department of Treasury stated they were providing all of their lowest learner emails, which should help fill those gaps and answer that question. The Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration has already begun an investigation of this matter, and his report will provide an independent review of the situation concerning Ms. Lerner's computer crash 3 years ago. We are committed to working cooperatively and transparently with this committee and the 6 other investigations going on, and we will continue to provide you with updates. This concludes my testimony. I'd be happy to take your questions.
Thank you. Commissioner, do you remember the name Braulio Castillo?
I do not.
Do you ever hear the name Gregory Roseman?
No.
Well, Castillo is now on trial for murdering his wife, but before that, this committee discovered that he had wrongfully received $500 million in contracts, IT contracts from the IRS. And Gregory Roseman took the fifth. He was one of your employees who gave him that, helped get him that contract. When you go home tomorrow, the next day, you might want to see Congresswoman Duckworth ask him how his ankle that he hurt at the prep school feels, because in fact he claimed to be a disabled veteran some 27 years later, and his old college buddy, a lifelong friend, helped him get that contract. At that time and now, we rely on the ability to recover emails as part of the chain of discovery. TIGTA, Russell George, your IG relies on that. Tomorrow we'll hear from the head of the National Archives, the archivist. He relies on your organization to comply with Federal law. The question I have for you is, how can we expect you have servers that run Microsoft Exchange? It captures every email in and out. How can we sit here and expect to trust an organization in which the C drive, the local hard drive of Lois Lerner, is supposed to be the only place that email existed?
That is not the only place that email existed. There is email on her email system in the server that has been found and produced. Any email that existed anywhere, even any hard copy of official records that existed anywhere, has been or will be provided to this committee.
Right. So in 2011, when her hard drive failed, if you were properly backing up all information required under the Federal Records Act, which would include the information she selected to have and apparently deleted from the Exchange server, you would have had all of those emails in your backup, wouldn't you?
All emails are not official records under any Official Records Act. Only emails are saved that reflect agency actions or—
Would you put your mic pointed towards you so we could hear?
Sure. Sorry about that.
No problem.
Okay.
So the bottom line is that you apparently were not capturing all emails. You were allowing her to delete emails but retain emails on her C drive, so that 6 months after— I just want to make sure we get the record straight— 6 months after she moved them to her C drive, you were no longer in possession of those. Is that correct?
No.
Well, what is correct?
What is correct is that each employee is limited to basically now 6,000 emails that they can hold on their email account, which is stored on the agency's server. The reason there's a limitation is the agency does not have servers large enough to sustain the retention of all emails. A decision was made 2 years ago when people looked at that and it was determined it would cost anywhere from $10 to $30 million to upgrade the system so that, in fact, all emails on the server would be preserved. Because of the budget constraints the agency was operating 2 years ago, the decision was made not to proceed.
$1.8 billion in IT is your budget. $1.8 billion. On $1.8 billion, isn't the retention of key documents that the American people need to count on, like whether or not they're being honestly treated by your employees, and especially somebody at such a high level, isn't that in fact a priority that should have allowed for full retention?
If we had the right resources, there'd be a lot of priorities we'd have. The budget for this year—
So the American people should believe that if they don't have the resources to pay their taxes, they shouldn't pay their taxes, because if the IRS doesn't have the resources, it won't keep records. That's pretty much what you're telling us here tonight, is that resources are a question of whether or not you maintain key documents. Let me just go into one thing in my limited time. You came here and you said, put it up on the board, that you were going to, as you did today, you were going to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. You saw that montage in the opening. You knew there was a problem with some of Lois Lerner's emails when you came to testify in March. Isn't that true?
I knew that I'd been told there was an issue that no one knew the ramifications of.
Did you reasonably believe that at least one email may have been lost?
No. I did not have any basis for knowing what the answer to that was.
So you knew there was a problem, but you're going to—
I knew there had been a problem. Somebody said there's an odd development in the way the emails are showing up. We're going to pull all of her emails and investigate it. The first time I knew that emails had been lost from her account was in April.
So when you knew in April that you said you were going to give us all of it, you said to Mr. Cummings and myself, you give us all, you went and told political appointees at Treasury, didn't you?
I did not.
You did not?
I did not.
So who did you tell in April when you knew?
Who did I tell? I didn't tell anybody. I was advised. I had no one I was going to tell.
You didn't tell your IG that some of the documents weren't going to be provided?
Did not.
Or did you cause someone to find out at the White House, at Treasury, or your IG?
I did not. If you have any evidence of that, I'd be happy to see it.
I asked a question.
And I answered it.
You did not cause anyone to find out?
I absolutely did not.
So you told us that all emails would be provided. When you discovered that all emails would not be provided, you did not come back and inform us. Is that correct?
All the emails we have will be provided. I did not say I would provide you emails that disappeared. If you have a magical way for me to do that, I'd be happy to know about it. I said I would provide all the emails. We are providing all the emails. The fact that 3 years ago, some of them, not all of them, but some of them were not available, I never said I would provide you emails we didn't have. And in fact, we are going to provide you 24,000 emails from the time—
My time has expired, and I've lost my patience with you. We now go to the ranking member.
I want you to talk about resources. Can you started to say something about resources.
Resources. We have a wide range—
How does that affect what you do?
What it affects is that we have a wide range of responsibilities. The IT budget has been cut by over $100 million over the last 4 years. This year's budget for 2014 required $300 million just for the implementation of the Affordable Care Act. The Congress provided us zero. That meant that $300 million to implement a statutory mandate had to be taken from other IT programs. That's been our challenge for the last 3 or 4 years.
Now, Commissioner Costin, last week, many members of Congress, including our own chairman, suggested that Lois Lerner intentionally crashed her computer to destroy emails. But last Friday, you testified about the facts. You provided Congress with evidence from 2011, contemporaneous, by the way, emails, showing exactly the opposite, that this was a technological problem. Since some members of Congress are still pushing this accusation, I want to walk through these emails, and let me ask staff to put up the slides. Lois Lerner emailed Associate Chief Information Officer at the IRS for help in recovering her hard drive, and it says, I quote, "I'm taking advantage of your offer to try and recapture my lost personal files. My computer skills are pretty basic, so nothing fancy. But there were some documents in the files that are irreplaceable. Whatever you can do to help is greatly appreciated," end of quote. Commissioner Costin, is that right? Is that accurate?
That's an yes.
Next slide. Later that day, that IT employee sought help from her support division, and he wrote, quote, "If she can't fix it, nobody can." Is that a document that a part of a document that you produced?
Yes.
Next slide. The next day, the field director emailed Ms. Lerner and said, I quote, "I checked with the technician and he still has your drive. He wanted to exhaust all avenues to recover the data before sending it to the hard drive cemetery. Unfortunately, after receiving assistance from several highly skilled technicians, including HP experts, he still cannot recover the data." Is that a part of a document that you supplied to
Yes.
our committee? Next slide. On August 1st, 2011, the IT field director wrote again to Ms. Lerner and informed her that, quote, "As a last resort, we sent your hard drive to CI's forensic lab to attempt data recovery," end of quote. Now, Mr. Koshinen, CI stands for Criminal Investigation Division at IRS, and what do they do in the forensic lab in that division?
They're an expert at drives and computers that have been seized by criminals, tax evaders, and others, and reconstituting emails wherever necessary.
Now, is this a step typical when an employee computer crashes? Do you normally do that?
No, it's extraordinary that the IRS would send the hard drive to CI for their help.
And why did you do that?
Because Ms. Lerner, I am advised, insisted that all possible efforts be made.
Now, despite all of these efforts, the field director finally emailed Ms. Lerner with the results. Next slide, please. And the news is not good. These sectors on the hard drive were bad, which made your data unrecoverable. I'm very sorry. Everyone involved tried their best, end of quote. So the technical experts concluded 3 years ago that the sectors is that accurate?
That's what the email says.
Now, these emails are concrete evidence of what really happened back in 2011. But my Republican colleagues just want to ignore them. They want to pretend they don't exist, those stubborn facts. But they do exist. And they show this was not intentional, this was not nefarious, this was not a conspiracy. Mr. Koshinen, are you aware of any evidence, documents, emails, and I remind you, you're under oath. I also remind you, you've been accused of false statements. Are you aware of any evidence, documents, emails, or other information from IT professionals that calls into question the accuracy and the legitimacy of these emails?
No.
And finally, and just so everyone is clear, Mr. Koshinen, when you testified before this committee on March 26, did you know about this email claim? Did you know Ms. Lerner's emails were lost forever?
No.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. We now go to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Mica.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've known the Commissioner for many years, and I know him to be a good public servant. I'm a little bit baffled. I know, John, I think that you're probably in a position of the guy at the end of the parade with the broom and shovel here, and in a very difficult situation. Let me, if I can, just take people back to the history of this, and to you, Commissioner. This targeting began sometime in March or April of 2010. In June of 2010, Chairman Issa alerted IRS, and it made an inquiry. In February of 2011, Lois Lerner sent an email to IRS employees stating that the Tea Party is a very dangerous matter. Then the chairman of the committee with jurisdiction in June of 2011, June 3rd, Dave Camp, who you spent time with recently, sent a letter to IRS. It looks like the heat really started to come on at that point. Now, an entire administration, and one of the biggest scandals in government was back during Watergate when, 18 minutes of tape was lost, and somehow between June 3rd and June 13th, Lois Lerner's hard drive crashes and is gone in 10 days. And it's not just a couple of days or 18 minutes like Rosemary Woods had the misfortune of losing, but 27 months, is that correct, of hard drive that's lost?
That's right. All the emails before June.
From June 9th, June of 09 to April of 11. So it raises many questions. Now, you came on in December, right, John?
Yes, the end of December.
And they briefed you were briefed about this whole situation the beginning, I guess, of January. In February, you testified today that you learned that there was a problem recovering some of the emails. Is that correct?
No, yes, what I learned was that there was an issue with her emails, that there was a date problem with the dates.
But then in March, what troubles me, you came to us and you said, last week informed this committee and others, we believe we've completed our production to the Ways and Means Committee and all the documents that are asked for. In light of these document productions, this is to us here, I hope the investigations can now be concluded in the very near future. You went through and told us what you just started out with of how much money you spent and how many documents you produced. But nowhere did we hear until just a few days ago that the hard drive crashed and all of this was unrecoverable. But again, the information we have is they briefed you in February. You gave us this testimony in March and never spoke to this.
Right. In February, as I said, they briefed me that with the emails that they had pulled, subject to the search terms, they were concerned that there was an issue with the date issues. I was not advised, did not know that there was a hard drive
John,
crash.
I gave you the benefit of the doubt. I went back and looked through all of what you gave us in March. This is your testimony. And even what you gave us today conflicts. So it raises questions because it appears that you knew and others knew.
Others knew.
And the Congress wasn't informed until just recently. Now, I don't have much time. I understand I just learned a little bit about this Sonasoft backup contractor, and they were retained. Are you familiar with them to back up emails?
I was not familiar with them, but I do have the information which provided me today.
Well, I have the same information, and I understand that they were dismissed in 2011, and they had started in 2005. And actually, in their advertisements, they bragged about how they could retain emails. Do you know if they have a backup that exists?
They were under a contract with the Chief Counsel of the IRS for about 3,000 employees in an internal disaster recovery program that would allow you to move emails from one system to another as a backup. That contract was terminated when the IRS Chief Counsel upgraded to Outlook 2010, and that alternate system was no longer needed.
But you don't know if they have that backup exists?
If the backup is for
But they were in place. They had that responsibility for backup between, I think, 2005 and 2011.
But that's for the Chief Counsel, yes, for 3,000 employees in the Chief Counsel, not for anybody else in the IRS.
That might exist? That data may exist?
If any of the data exists, it's been searched for. All of the emails we have, I'm told we've searched everywhere.
Did you ask that company for that information?
The company didn't have any data on their servers. The data was all inside the IRS.
And that's gone too?
No, everything that we have and all that was a disaster recovery system for the Chief Counsel. All of those emails across the system have been any data that the Chief Counsel has or that the IRS has been searched.
Again, Mr. Chairman, many questions.
I thank the gentleman. We now go to the gentlelady from the District of Columbia, Ms. Norton.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Like Mr. Micah, John Costanen, I have known you well before you came to Congress. Since coming to Congress, I have been impressed, not a little bit, by the confidence you have inspired in Republican and Democratic presidents alike. It's as if they saved you for jobs that others couldn't do, didn't have the guts to do, or didn't have the integrity to do. You are well known on both sides of the aisle as the government's most versatile turnaround artist. When agencies is in trouble, turn to John Koskinen. Therefore, I begin my series of questions simply by offering you an apology. I believe you deserve one. You deserve one because of accusations designed to sacrifice the reputation of a public service with a spotless reputation for political advantage without a scintilla, and I use my words advisedly, of evidence. It's vile enough to look a man in the face and accuse him of perjury without submitting any evidence. It is much worse when all of the evidence supports the version of the facts of the man you are facing. Whether it is that the learner crash occurred well before this investigation began, she must be clairvoyant. Whether it's been confirmed by the decriminalization lab, all the evidence is on your side, Mr. Koskinen. And I want to point out for the record that the line of conspiracy hunting has shifted with the learner crash. For the longest time, the line of questioning was about one subject alone. So we've moved from one scapegoat to another. What we've just moved off of the notion that this was all a conspiracy directed on behalf of the White House. That also, without a crumb of evidence. Lacking evidence, the crash provides new fodder. Just for the record, Mr. Koskinen, have you identified any evidence since you have been commissioner that IRS employees before you came or now were part of a conspiracy to intentionally target the president's political enemies?
No, I have done no investigations. I have read the IG's report that said inappropriate criteria were used to identify organizations for review, and the IG had 9 recommendations, and we have accepted all of those recommendations. I think it's important for the public to be confident that whoever they are, they're going to be treated fairly by the IRS, whether they're Republicans, Democrats, belong to organizations of one kind or another, wherever they show up, wherever they speak. They should understand they'll be treated fairly. If there's an issue, it's because something in their tax return. If somebody else had that issue, they'd get the same response from the IRS. I think it's critical that the public have that confidence, and we're doing everything we can to restore that confidence.
Well, 41 individuals have testified, just as you have, that there's no evidence of the first conspiracy. Now that we're on to the second conspiracy, and so did the IG. Do you recall that the IG also testified, and I will quote, the Inspector General, when asked by the Ways and Means Committee, was there any evidence of political motivation from the White House? He said, we did not have, did you have any evidence? We did not, sir. So I just want to say that your strong reputation, your character should hold you in good stead as you face baseless accusations. And when a man faces accusations and no evidence is put before him, I think he's got nothing to worry about. Thank you very much for your extraordinary service to the people of the United States.
Would the gentlelady yield?
I'd be happy to yield.
I appreciate it. I just would wonder if that quote from March we can find Lois Lerner's emails. Would the Commissioner stand behind that statement, or would he have to qualify it with, we will find some of Lois Lerner's emails?
Well, I'm sure he was trying to find all of Lois Lerner's emails, and they were lost before the crash occurred, before we even began.
But not after Mr. Camp had sent letters, not after we had begun our investigation. Her crash came after we began investigating.
And therefore what, Mr. Chairman?
And therefore?
And therefore she did what?
And therefore documents disappeared after?
And therefore she did what, or Mr. Costigan did what?
I didn't say Mr. Costigan.
Well, that's what we're here to learn, and I repeat, there's no evidence that this man had anything to do with any malfeasance, or that he should be accused of perjury before this committee.
Only that he said that he was aware that Lerner's emails were overlooked, missing, or had other technical issues.
There was no evidence at that time to know whether they had been overlooked, missing, or had other issues. I did not say that we knew that. I said at that time we had no idea whether any of those applied. That's why they were investigating. That's what I was told then in April when they came back with the findings as they had reviewed it all. I never said at the time that, in fact, we had any idea whether any of that was true.
And, Eleanor, that's the inconsistency that we're talking about here tonight.
What's the inconsistency, Mr. Chairman?
If you know that you have a difference in the numbers and
What
you're
numbers? We
exploring,
don't know the numbers yet, Mr. Chairman.
the Commissioner knew that there was a problem, but she didn't know the details. We were never told there was a problem.
So he
in
should
March.
talk before he knows the details.
When every person up on the dais, including the ranking member, wants to know if you're going to get all, and you know there's at least some sort of a problem or concern.
Mr. Koskinen, what is your response to that? You said we're going to find them all.
Response to that.
Were you lying when you said we're going to find them all?
Absolutely not.
Thank you. We now go to Mr. Turner.
Mr. Koskinen, you are touted as a man of integrity, and I've even heard you say it about yourself on television. So I'm going to ask you to use that integrity to help me understand a few things that have become confusing to me. Now, you said that you want to restore confidence to the agency, and I have no question to question that. I have no basis upon which to think that that isn't your goal. But you have to understand that this discussion of the missing emails goes right to the heart of the issue of confidence and of the issue of your ability to do that and of your integrity. So let's start first with just some general concept of ethics, back to your integrity. Now, you agree, as Commissioner, that you can't both be the manager of the agency, the investigator of the agency, judge, jury, and prosecutor of matters that are being undertaken under and by the agency, right? There's inherent conflict and bias in those positions. You, by basic concepts of an ethics with integrity, can't fill all those, correct?
I'm not sure I understand that question. I'm in charge of the agency. I'm responsible for its activities, and I'm accountable for its activities.
So you believe that you can testify under oath today that no crime has been committed by Lois Lerner at the IRS?
I can testify I have seen no evidence that
I understand that. And that is the question that has been bantered back and forth here. I can tell you I have no evidence that Lois Lerner has committed a crime, but I don't have it within, I don't have the agency, and I certainly don't have the ability to go to the FBI and others and have them take things from you that can give that.
All right.
Just because you haven't seen all the evidence doesn't mean that you have the ability to just blanketly say no crime was committed.
I didn't say no crime. I said I've seen no evidence. I would note again,
and that's
the
the
Inspector
distinction.
General,
because you can't testify here under oath that no crime was committed.
The Inspector General has started an
I'm asking you, do you have any ability to say no crime has been committed?
I have the ability to say I have seen no evidence of any crime.
Of course, but you cannot say what I've asked you, that no crime has been committed. So let's go to Lois Lerner. She came before this committee, and while she was placed under oath, she evoked the Fifth because she indicated that she wanted to assert those rights, albeit that she did that incorrectly, because she had fear of prosecution. Now, let's say that again. Prosecution, fear of criminal prosecution. Now, you can't testify today that Lois Lerner has no need for a fear of criminal prosecution because you can't testify that Lois Lerner didn't commit a crime. Now, here's what I'm concerned about, since you are a man who's placed before us with integrity. If in the process of these emails being destroyed. There were those in your agency that knew that it was a possibility that a crime was committed. Then they committed a crime, because destruction of evidence of a crime is, in fact, a crime. And you can't testify today that no one, that there was no crime committed in the destruction of her emails, right? You can only say you have no evidence of a crime having been committed in the destruction of these emails, right?
I have no evidence whether she beat her dog, whether she beat children. I have no evidence of a whole series of things.
Right. That's why it's so important getting to what Jim Jordan has said about a special prosecutor, and that's what my question is to you today. If you are truly a man of integrity, and you know the difference between you don't have any evidence that a crime has been committed versus no crime has been committed, you have to understand that the whole integrity of your agency is at risk. You possibly have people at the IRS who are committing crimes, and they're not being held accountable. The only way you can know that is to pick up the phone, call the FBI, and ask them to come in and do an investigation on the disappearance of these emails. So my question to you is, will you call the FBI and ask them to come in and investigate these missing emails that their destruction could possibly have been a crime?
At this time, the Inspector General, an independent agency not controlled by us, started an investigation.
They are not a criminal investigating agency.
They are actually capable of doing criminal investigations as well as civil. They make recommendations.
Will you call the FBI, because the integrity of your agency is absolutely at stake? We have Lois Lerner having invoked the Fifth in front of this committee, indicating that she's fearful of criminal prosecution, which should be enough for you, a man of integrity, to pause and think, maybe crimes were committed within my agency, and now that these emails are missing, maybe someone not of integrity committed a crime in destroying them. You should call the FBI. You should call for a special prosecutor.
I cannot enter into Lois Lerner's mind. I've never met her as to what she
I ask you to pick up the phone and call the FBI, not enter Lois Lerner's mind.
I am not going to call the FBI. The Inspector General has started. When the Inspector General
then that is an issue of your personal integrity, because the integrity of this agency and the concern that Americans have of it is at stake.
I reject the suggestion that my integrity depends upon my calling the FBI. The Inspector General will issue a report. We will all get the benefit of that report, and then we can determine what the appropriate action is.
I have always believed that what happened in your agency with Lois Lerner is a crime. I believe that there were others involved. I believe the emails that are missing are the ones that would probably give us an ability to establish that, and I believe that somebody undertook criminal act in its destruction, and I believe that since you can't tell me I'm wrong, and it's enough of a doubt in your mind, as the commissioner of that agency, you should call the FBI.
That's an interesting set
Gentleman's time has expired.
No facts behind them.
Thank the gentleman. We now go to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Tierney.
Thank you. Mr. Koskinen, good evening, and thank you for being here tonight. I don't think I've seen a display of this kind of disrespect in all the time I've been here in Congress, and it's unfortunate that anybody would have to be subjected to it. This is an incredible thing, a public servant being—
Would the gentleman yield?
No, I will not yield.
Okay, the gentleman will suspend. Is the gentleman—
No, I won't suspend either. I'm in the middle of my time, and I will
casting—
continue to ask questions.
The gentleman will
because it's my
suspend.
time. I won't suspend.
Please stop the clock. The time is suspended. I would caution all members not to characterize the intent or the character of your fellow members here on the dais.
But it's, yeah, I was going to say, but it's fair game to question the integrity of the witness?
With all due respect, the rules of the House the rules of the House speak to questioning the integrity of members. I would caution all of us that, well, the Chair has questioned the testimony earlier as whether it was the truth or the whole truth, that, in fact, to question the motives of the witness should be done only on evidence, but to question the motives of your fellow member is, in fact, within the rules of the House, an action for which the floor can take down words.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, of course.
Thank you. You talk about the rules of the committee and the rules—
The gentleman will state his parliamentary inquiry, please.
Use your mic. Use your mic.
Has the Chairman violated the rules of the committee?
Please state your point of parliamentary inquiry.
And the Chairman cut off—
The gentleman will state a point of parliamentary inquiry.
Has the Chairman violated his own rules in
That's a question.
process
Do
of conducting
you have a question of approval?
May I ask the question,
He'll
Mr.
state
Chairman?
it in a point, as a point of
Yeah,
order.
just let him ask the question, please.
I will not. State a point of inquiry. If not, we will go on. The gentleman may continue. Mr. Tierney.
You know, I think the understanding here is the rules of the House say that members should conduct themselves in a way that reflects credibility upon the House. I think people watching this hearing today can decide whether or not that's been followed on that. Look, I think what you're trying to tell people at one point is it's the Inspector General's responsibility to review this matter and file a report, and in that report make recommendations as to what action might be done, or upon reviewing that report, you or others might make recommendations of what might be done, such as refer to another body like the FBI or somebody else. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So we're not even to that point yet.
That's correct.
I guess, you know, as opposed to shoot and then aim, we might be trying to first gather some information and decide where we go from there.
Correct.
Correct. All right. Have you testified tonight to anything that was not discussed at last Friday's hearing?
I'm sorry, did I what?
Have you discussed tonight with this committee anything, any matter pertinent to this subject that was not discussed last Friday?
Thus far, no.
So just to get it right, you were scheduled to testify originally in front of Chairman Camp's committee tomorrow on the 24th. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Had they been in touch with you or your staff before scheduling that date?
Yes, they actually had asked whether I would be available in the morning on Tuesday, and I was not, and we agreed that I would testify in the afternoon.
So you agreed to testify voluntarily?
I've always agreed to testify voluntarily over the course of the last 20 years.
So after you discussed and agreed to testify before Chairman Camp, you received a unilateral subpoena from Chairman Isser. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And that subpoena asked you to come here. In fact, it compelled you to come here tonight.
Correct.
Did Mr. Isser ever call you and ask you to come voluntarily?
No.
Did any of his staff ever call you and ask you to come voluntarily?
No.
Did he ever explain to you why it was so urgent that you come here at 7 o'clock on Monday night when you were already scheduled to appear voluntarily before a different committee of jurisdiction on Tuesday, the 24th, the following day?
No.
Now, I won't ask you to speculate, but I think some might speculate that either people don't think that Mr. Camp could do the job, which I would sort of think is a suspect. He's been known to be a pretty good member, or that there's some sort of competition going on here. I don't know. Some might speculate that. But when Chairman Camp heard that Chairman Isser had subpoenaed you for tonight, you were all of a sudden notified that there was going to be a hearing in Chairman Camp's committee on Friday of last week. Is that correct?
That's correct.
How were you notified of that?
The staff asked if I would be available on Friday. They had to get the approval agreement of the minority, since I understand there's a 7-day rule. I told them that I could make myself available on Friday.
Now, how long did you testify on Friday?
Total length of the hearing was 4.5 hours with a recess for about 45 minutes in the middle.
I would think that having testified all that time on the subject matter, that tonight's hearing might be somewhat redundant on that, and so far it has been. Is that correct?
It has similarities to Friday.
In looking on this, I think the only thing that might be different in the sequence of what's going on is now I understand that Chairman Isser has invited Ms. Jennifer O'Connor to testify tomorrow. Do you know Ms. O'Connor?
I do not.
Okay. Do you know whether or not she worked at the IRS from May to November of 2013?
I do understand she did.
Now, she left in November of last year. Is that right?
That's my understanding.
And that would have been well before there was any discovery of Ms. Lerner's emails gone missing. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Do you know where Ms. O'Connor works now?
My understanding is she works at the White House.
So I think some would speculate that maybe the people in this committee think they've now trumped Mr. Camp on his committee, and maybe that gives some cameras in the action here, but nobody would want to speculate like that. Again, I'll just end my questioning here by saying that I think it's unfortunate that you have to be subjected to this after having gone through it last Friday, and I hope that members will reflect the credibility of the House from here on in, at least, if it hasn't been done so far. Thank you.
I thank the gentleman. We now go to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Duncan.
Well, thank you very much. And first, Mr. Chairman, let me thank you for pursuing this investigation in the way you have, because in a free country, no individual or no group of individuals should be targeted for their political beliefs. And certainly, I think almost everyone who has looked closely at this feels that that happened in this situation. Although on March 26th, when Mr. Koskinen was here before us, he said there had been no targeting, just inappropriate criteria. The Washington Post said Mr. Koskinen, quote, fell back on bureaucraties. And the Washington Post, of course, is probably the main defender of the federal bureaucracy, and their fact checker said that Mr. Koskinen should be given 3 Pinocchios for that testimony, and they, in their classification, 3 Pinocchios is 1 Pinocchio under what they call whoppers. So I don't know what his opinion is on that, but I will say this: all over the country, people are saying that there's a double standard being applied here. They're saying there's one standard for everybody else and one standard for the IRS. And I can tell you that you know, I've been following politics and government ever since I was in high school, and I can tell you that I believe there's more anger and resentment and disgust toward the federal government today than any time in my lifetime, because everybody seems to feel today that we've ended up with a government of, by, and for the bureaucrats instead of one that's of, by, and for the people. Mr. Koskinen was given a chance on Friday to apologize on behalf of the IRS, and he didn't do so, but I can tell you that I think the people of this country deserve at least an apology that a different standard has been applied by the IRS than would be applied to individuals who were having problems on their taxes. And it seems that every time the federal government screws up, which is often, they always fall back on one or both of 2 excuses. They always say they're either underfunded or their technology is out of date. And, of course, that's what we've heard today. But I can tell you the people of this country are sick and tired of the arrogance within the federal government. And this hearing and others that will follow about this, I think, will help assure that this does not happen again. And so I commend you for it, Mr. Chairman, and I yield back the balance of my time.
Would gentleman
Yes, sir.
yield? I thank the gentleman. I'd like to go through the question one more time, Commissioner. When you testify that, in fact, you knew there was this problem when you were here last time, but you didn't know that, in fact, emails were lost, is that correct?
That's correct.
But you knew there was a problem. You knew that there was this sequence problem or numbering problem. Is that correct?
Correct.
Did you take any steps to find out what that sequence or numbering problem meant? I mean, people tell you there's a problem almost always, at least in my experience as a CEO. You say, well, tell me about the problem. What does the problem mean? Did you do that?
No, I asked to be kept updated. There were 200 people working on this issue, and they said they would let me know, and they did let me know.
So there's 200 people working on the problem of delivering emails.
Correct.
And it took this long to find out that there were missing ones from Lois Lerner.
It took until...
It's almost a year.
Well, that's right. From the time there was anybody thought there was a problem, it took about 2 months.
Okay. So
nobody knew there was a problem last year.
But you knew there was this inconsistency when you came before us.
Yes, I knew I'd been identified, that a problem had been identified and was under investigation.
Why is it you did not answer when asked a dozen times, really, on both sides of the aisle, will you deliver, we can find Lois Lerner's emails?
Right, and that was my assumption at the time.
But you knew there was some problem with some part of her emails. You'd been briefed on that.
But we had no idea what, at that time, nobody understood what the ramifications were. Were there emails that was it part of the production process? They ran the whole production process again. They searched all the files again to make sure that the production process itself hadn't caused emails to be lost. So at the time I testified, no one had any idea whether there were any emails missing or not.
Right, but were you aware when you testified the last time that there had been a crash in Lois Lerner's disk drive some years before?
When I testified here?
Yes.
No.
Were the people reporting to you aware of that?
The IT people apparently were. I'm advised that they knew that, they discovered there was an issue with their computer in late February.
Thank you. We now go to the gentleman from Massachusetts, Mr. Lynch. Sorry, yeah, Mr. Stephen Lynch.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I do want to raise the issue that while the IRS is not held in very high repute these days, neither is the United States Congress. And I want to thank you for your willingness to testify. I would like to refocus on the evidence here. You know, I'm a little bit surprised at the chronology that Mr. Tierney has laid out here, where you were originally invited by Mr. Camp and the Ways and Means Committee to testify, and then it seems like when Mr. Issa found out about that, and you were unilaterally subpoenaed here to testify before you were going to testify tomorrow at that other hearing, and then Mr. Camp jumps in front of him, and now I have billboards, and I had a video clipped up there earlier. Great showmanship, and I'm just worried I'll come in here tomorrow, there'll be a 16-piece orchestra to sort of cap out the show. That's not the way this is supposed to happen. That's not the way this is supposed to go down. I mean, I think there's some serious issues here that we have to get to, but all of this fanfare, all of this showmanship is clouding it over. I think we're doing a disservice to the people that we represent. And I think we are failing greatly in meeting the high expectations of the American people. I think that's probably an understatement. I would like to focus on the evidence. And going back to the heart of this issue, we did have a situation where there was evidence and admission on the part of the IRS that they were using search terms such as the Tea Party, Patriots, 9/12 Project, in terms of be on the lookout for groups that were applying with those characteristics. They also were looking for any issues in an application that included government spending or government debt or taxes. They're also looking for statements in the case file criticizing how the country was run. That's evidence. When the IRS goes after citizens of the United States because of this criteria, that is evidence of their state of mind. That is relevant evidence. Now, that's not all they looked for. They also looked for any search terms regarding progressives or these emerge groups, which were also very progressive groups, 501c applications. They also went after any successor organizations to ACORN because they were highly progressive. So there was a widespread. It's not just going after conservative groups, but it's going after American citizens who have various political views. And that is evidence. That's hard evidence. Would you agree?
Is there evidence that, exactly?
Right. Okay. So when these emails go missing for 27 months on Lois Lerner's account, you realize how that just feeds into the suspicion that there's something going on here.
I understand that. That's why I think it's important to understand we were able to find 24,000 emails in that period.
I know what you found. I appreciate that, and I think you went at it legitimately and honestly. Let me ask you, when Mr. Russell, the IG for the IRS, when he looked at it, he was looking at the search term issue for us. Did he look at the other issue of the missing emails? Did he do any of that, or was that known to him?
It was not known to anyone at that time.
Okay, so we didn't look at that.
Pardon?
We didn't look at that.
The IG, to my understanding, did not look at that. He has started an investigation of that now.
Okay. Well, I think that's a that's something we might want to revisit then. And do you think that it would be worthwhile to have the Inspector General go back and look at the way these emails went missing? And I also know that there's some allegations, unfounded allegations, about 6 other employees about their emails going missing.
No, he should look at it, and he is looking at it. I expect that when they complete that investigation, they'll provide a report to the public, us, and this committee, and other investigators.
Okay. My time has expired. I yield back.
Thank you. The gentleman just said it was unfounded. Are there other drives that led to other emails not being available, to your knowledge?
At this point, there aren't. We noted last week, I had asked, as I said in my testimony in May, as we were finally getting the arms around Lois Lerner, I said, could we look at the other 82 custodians and determine whether there are other hard drives that would affect this? As I noted, we now have found several custodians. It's not clear what emails, if any, were lost. Again, that was part of what we had hoped to complete in our full review of all of this, at which point we would have provided you with that information.
Okay, so we don't know today about others. There may be others because there were other crashes.
There may be others, yes. We have provided information, what we know. We just learned about that last Monday.
Just a follow-up on that?
Of course.
I'm trying to remember her name, Nicole Flax?
Flax.
Flax. There was a story last week that her emails were missing. Have we made any progress on trying to figure out her emails?
I think that was cleared up, that it was just one of her 2 computers. That there weren't.
So are her emails missing?
There's no evidence now any email is missing.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. I now ask unanimous consent that the 141-page staff report from April 7, 2014 be placed in the record. Without objection, so ordered. The title of it is Debunking the Myth that the IRS Targeted Progressives. We now recognize the gentleman from North Carolina, Mr. McHenry.
Mr. Koskinen, there's a lot of discussion, and you've been through multiple hearings related to this Lois Lerner targeting of conservative groups. Do you understand what the fuss and fury is about this week? Do you understand the reason why many folks are really upset about this?
I understand, having been around Washington a long time.
Yeah, I mean, you've had a long career. I mean,
But then one of the reasons we've taken it seriously is that if there has been a hard drive crash and emails disappear, that's a matter that should be reviewed. As I say, we provided all the information we have about the emails. And in fact, it appears that Ms. Lerner was working very hard to retrieve the emails, not to lose them.
But you had the ability to share with Congress in real time and share with the American people in real time what you were finding. Why didn't you do that?
Because my judgment was that what we should do is produce all of the information when we had it, not dribble it out. We actually
Even if that meant along the way, people are questioning how you answered congressional inquiries.
We've answered a congressional inquiry
I know you
completely
have.
and totally.
No, I understand that. But for me, this is really not about you. It's not about anybody up here on the dais. It's not about a hearing. It's about the American people. Your agency sends fear up the spines of every American when you contact them. And if there's one receipt missing, a small business person searches far and wide for that one last receipt. And yet we have evidence that, and you've testified that, Lois Lerner's hard drive crashed, and that, erased emails from January 2009 to April 2011. Just the time period that Congress was most concerned about with the targeting of conservative and Tea Party groups. So look, I mean, I understand, and you can answer very reasonably, but when you see that type of thing happen, it almost defies anyone's sense of capacity that could happen.
I would note that the Congress is very interested in what happened from April of 2011 until May of 2013, and we have produced all of those, or are in the process of producing all of those emails. So we have significant amounts of emails not lost that we can determine from Lois Lerner email, 43,000 unlost Lois Lerner emails, plus we've been able to find another 24,000. But the point, I think, is important, as I've said. The question is, in the period in which we found the 24,000, what are the emails that she sent outside the agency that would not be reflected in anybody's accounts. And as I
Right,
say,
and how are they going to magically come forward? The other thing that's
they're going to come forth
interesting,
because the White House and Treasury have provided this committee and other committees.
so that means she didn't email
those
outside the
emails.
White House or Treasury.
Pardon?
That means she didn't email outside of White House or Treasury. Okay, but the point about this,
Well, I'm
and,
sorry, but
and
that
what's
was, I
interesting,
thought, was a big issue, was whether, in fact, this was all part of her
it is, but
firing.
it's not the question I'm asking you,
sorry,
sir.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I've been very respectful of
Yes,
your
sir.
time in giving you an opportunity to answer.
I appreciate
so,
that.
when the reason why I'm asking this question is I just want you to be able to convey to the American people that running the IRS, a very frightening agency, right, a very frightening agency for my constituents at home, that you get it, that you understand why the American people look at this and say, this is so far beyond my ability to reason. An agency that has a more than $1 billion, nearly $2 billion IT budget, lets a hard drive crash. It just seems absolutely ridiculous and beyond comprehension that this would happen in such a convenient context, and yet we have Lois Lerner, who's been a major focus of this inquiry, and she's the one who's searching desperately to make sure that we recover her hard drive that may incriminate her. We won't know, though, because this has been recycled. So I'll yield the balance of my time to Mr. Jordan.
I take the jump for you. I just have one question in the few seconds we have. What date did you learn that you could not get all of her emails?
I learned that in April. I don't recall when.
You don't know the day?
I do not know the day.
Early April?
I have no recollection.
Mid-April?
April.
Well, Mr. Chairman, we know that. I'll yield back the time and wait for my 5 minutes. Thank you.
Would the gentleman yield?
Yeah, I'd be happy to.
You only know within a month. Could you provide the committee with some evidence from the calendar that would indicate what day you were briefed?
I'd be delighted to. There's going to be nothing on my calendar that shows that, but you can look at the entire month of my calendars.
Well, but who briefed you?
Pardon?
Who told you that email had been lost?
I don't recall who. I meet with, I've addressed all of the people doing the work. I've talked to people as it goes along. There's not
Okay, so your testimony today is you don't remember the name of the person that told you sometime in April.
All I know is that by sometime in April, I was aware, A, that there had been emails lost, B, that we were reconstituting emails to the extent we could from other custodians, and by mid-May, we were able to determine.
But you don't remember the name of the people who told you that?
When I was told or by whom. I just know it was in that time frame.
Okay. I don't remember as an answer. We now go to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Connolly.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd ask unanimous consent that an article dated July 4, 2013 by Jonathan Weissman in the New York Times, taking direct issue with your staff report that you entered into the record with unanimous consent, be entered in the record at this time.
Would the gentleman state the date of that article, please?
Yes, July 4, 2013.
So somebody disputes my April 7, 2014 with a July 2013 article?
Mr. Chairman, he kind of lays out a pretty good case, but I think it should be in the record just like your staff.
I certainly think that it's fine for somebody to determine almost a year ahead of a report that the report is invalid without objection, so ordered.
I thank the Chair for his courtesy. Mr. Koskinen, from your testimony, the IRS does not permit all of its 90,000 employees to store all of their email in their active inboxes. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Why is that?
Because we do not have the server capacity to absorb all of those emails.
Why don't you have the server capacity to absorb all those emails?
Because of the expense.
What would be the cost of
The
expanding that capacity?
estimate made when the IRS considered expanding its system would cost somewhere between $10 and $30 million. That was an estimate 2 years ago.
Okay. IRS employees instead move their emails when they want to store into archive files on their hard drives. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Would one alternative be the cloud?
There's no way out of the emails on the IRS go into the cloud at this time.
Why?
Because we're very sensitive to security of taxpayer information, and so thus far the IRS has not moved any information to the cloud, although my understanding is that the IT department continues to look at that issue.
Hard drives crash, especially in older computers. Industry experts say that businesses should replace their employees' computers every 3 to 4 years. Is that correct?
That's the general industry standard.
And how often does the IRS meet that standard?
We refresh them over time. Sometimes it takes as long as 5 to 7 years.
So could part of the problem be we're dealing with an aging set of PCs in IRS because we haven't invested in new equipment?
There's no doubt about that. As I noted on Friday, we have thousands of employees still running Windows XP. We're trying to move on to Windows 7. Windows XP is no longer supported by Microsoft.
Well, surely this concern we have up here with hard drives crashing and emails not being properly archived or stored and all kinds of other problems, and given precisely the sensitivity of the data that the IRS possesses, surely the Congress has provided an investment portfolio, a set of resources for you to quickly update your computer technology, your information technology in the IRS. Is that not correct?
We are provided significant amounts of money, but significantly less than we need.
Has your budget gone up or down in the last 4 years?
Budget has gone down regularly every 4 years.
How much has your budget declined?
Budget has declined over the last 4 years, $850 million, as the number of taxpayers has gone up by 7 million, and we've been asked to implement the Foreign Account Tax Compliance Act and the Affordable Care Act.
Your budget's gone down $800 million in real dollars?
Yes.
Nominal dollars, not including index for inflation.
That's right. That's the actual dollar number.
Wow. That's amazing, given our concern that we wouldn't be providing you with resources to try to turn this around and make sure this kind of thing doesn't happen again.
The House mark for this year's upcoming fiscal year 15 cuts us by another $350 million.
$350 million in one fiscal year?
Yes.
Well, surely that will change in light of our deep and profound concern for what happened to Lois Lerner's hard drive.
We have high hopes.
Well, surely you've been called to these midnight sessions to try to see what help you need, right? You've been asked. Have you been subpoenaed or voluntarily requested before any committee of the House of Representatives to testify as to what your needs are and what a $350 million cut on top of an $800 million cut over the last 4 years might do to your agency?
I've testified before the House Appropriations Subcommittee, and we have provided updated information to the House and the Senate appropriators about the negative impact of a $350 million cut.
And their heart bled for you, undoubtedly. Thank you, Mr. Koskinen.
I thank the gentleman. For what purpose does the gentleman seek recognition?
A quick unanimous consent request. I'd like to enter it in the record without objection, if I may. The Reason magazine article from the weekend of June 21st that IRS had a contract with email backup service from vendor Sonasoft starting in 2005. And then I'd like to also put in the record the motto of Sonasoft from an email they have, which said, if the IRS uses Sonasoft products to back up their services, why wouldn't you choose them to protect their services? And then they had this in service that way to have a third article. The Daily Caller on June 21st this weekend said it's an article that cites Sonafost's 6 years relationship with IRS came to an abrupt close at the end of fiscal year 2011 as congressional investigators began looking into IRS conservative targeting scandal.
Without objection, it will all be placed in the record. With that, we go to the gentleman from Ohio, Mr. Jordan.
I thank the Chairman. Mr. Koskinen, I want to go to your testimony. IRS in February of 2014 identified documents indicated Ms. Lerner had experienced a computer failure in 2011. In mid-March 2014, again, your testimony, the IRS focused on Lerner email for production. During this review, i.e., during the mid-March review, the data stored on her computer hard drive was determined at the time to be unrecoverable. So mid-March, you knew the data was unrecoverable. Late March, you came in front of this committee and did not tell us that. You didn't tell us her computer failed. You didn't tell us we can't recover emails. You said we're going to give them all to you. Fine. Your testimony is, I was still checking. I wasn't quite sure we'd lost them all, even though the IT professional said we lost them all. I wasn't quite sure. Last round, I just asked you, when did you learn? And you said sometime in April.
Correct.
So I want to focus on when you did officially learn according to your definition. The chairman asked you, who told you this information? You can't remember?
No, I do not remember.
Did someone tell you in person? Did they send you an email? How did you get the information?
I don't recall. I do not get emails on these subjects, so I'm sure it was someone in person.
This has been a major news story for the last 13 months, and you don't remember who came up to you and said, hey, boss, we lost Lois Lerner's emails. You don't even remember anything about that situation.
No, I remember being told in April.
But you don't remember who told you?
I do not recall who told me.
Something that's been a front-page story for you would think that would be significant enough to remember how it happened, when they told you, what the actual date was.
Got to remember.
You might even remember where you were standing.
Remember, I'm running an agency with 90,000 people.
And this has been the biggest issue in front of your agency for the last year.
We're in the middle of filing season is all this is
so here we
going
go. Here we go. So you find out sometime in April. You don't know who told you. What did you do then?
I was advised. I didn't do anything. I was advised that they were reconstituting as many emails as they could from other.
No. Who did you tell? Did you tell the White House?
I never told the White House.
Politico reports you told the White House in April. You didn't tell anyone at the White House?
I don't think that's what Politico reported.
Did you tell anyone at Treasury? Did you tell any of your bosses?
I did not tell anybody. I did not tell anybody at Treasury either.
Did you talk to anyone about this?
No.
Talk to anyone outside the agency about when?
Not outside the agency. I talked in the agency about it.
And then when did you tell Congress?
Pardon?
When did you tell Congress?
We produced the public report 10 days ago.
So you knew in April, and you waited 2 months to tell this body. The body has been looking into this. Why did you wait so long?
Because we actually were going to wait until we produced all of Lois Lerner's emails,
No,
had reviewed all the custodians. I'm telling you.
Hey, you can't give us all our emails. You done lost some. So don't give me that statement.
Can I give you an answer?
I want to know why you didn't tell us you had lost some of her emails, because that's what we care about.
Can I give you the answer?
Sure.
All right. Our program was to complete the production of all Lois Lerner emails, complete the review of all custodians, and
but it's kind of important, Mr. Commissioner, to tell us when you lost emails for the person that we're focused on. Don't you think? Let me ask you this. Let me ask you a more important question. Did you tell the Justice Department?
No.
Why not? There's a criminal investigation going on. Don't you think that's a pertinent fact that they'd like to know?
We have no evidence that there's any criminal violation involved.
I didn't ask you that. There's a criminal, the President of the United States said on May 15th, we got to get to the bottom of this. The Attorney General said, we're going to do everything we can to find out what happened here. And you have information, you still have you talked to the FBI at all?
I have never talked to the FBI about it.
Don't you think it's incumbent upon the Commissioner of the Internal Revenue Service, when he gets think about this, think about the average citizen out there. FBI is investigating some citizen, and they lose documents over a 2-year time period that are critical to the investigation, and they say, you know what, we're not going to tell the FBI. And then the FBI learns later. Do you think that person's in trouble? Heck yeah, they are. But you as the committee, you say, I don't need to tell anybody. You didn't tell did you tell the Inspector General?
We issued a public report.
No. Back in April. You told us just a few minutes ago you learned in April. Did you tell the Inspector General in April that you lost Lois Lerner's emails?
No, because we didn't know whether we'd lost any.
How long were you? Here's what I'd like to know. Okay. If you waited 2 months to tell anyone. At what point does it become obstruction of justice? 3 months? 4 months? 2 weeks? When you got that kind of critical information, you're saying, I'm going to hang on to this. We got to wait and make sure we can spin this better, do that, whatever it was. The fact that you didn't tell us, and we've been after this for 13 months. We subpoenaed 6 months ago for this. You had a hearing on the 26th where everyone on this dais went after you and said, we want all the emails, and you assured us you'd get them all to us, and then you learn you can't, and you don't tell anybody, and you give us a report that you sent to Senator Hatch and Senator Wyden, and on page 9 of some report you say, oh, by the way,
actually,
we lost the emails.
That starts on page 5. It's half of the 7-page.
Page 5. Imagine, I'd like for you to tell us, not send us in some 37-page document on page 5 on a Friday afternoon, for goodness sake.
It's a 7-page document.
7-page document on page 5. This is ridiculous, Mr. Chairman, that we did not know this when he first knew, and that he almost knew everything on the 26th and wouldn't tell us. He wouldn't tell us a computer crash, wouldn't tell us we think we might have lost them all. We're not quite sure. We're 99% sure, and he wouldn't tell us, and then waits 2 months before he does. Ridiculous.
I thank the gentleman. For the record, Ways and Means Committee referred 4 criminal charges to justice against Lois Lerner months ago. Ms. Spear.
Mr. Chairman, I implore you to enforce the rules of this committee. Rule 11, K4, asks that you control this committee, that we operate with decorum and professionalism and order. Badgering witnesses is inappropriate and shameful for this committee to conduct itself in that manner. And I would implore you in the future to rely more heavily on this rule. I would now like to ask unanimous consent.
Is the gentlelady making a motion?
No, at this point, I just want us to get back to basics and to run this committee as it should be run, with respect and decorum, and badgering this commissioner, as virtually every member on the Republican side has done, is shameful. And it's got to stop. Or else I'm telling you, one member here is going to walk out and not return.
Mr. Chairman?
It's the gentlelady's time.
And I'm not yielding.
Would the gentlelady yield?
No, the gentlelady is not yielding.
Gentlelady, please yield.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
I said, would the gentlelady please yield?
That was better, but no.
I got you a lot. That's good.
Mr. Chairman, I would like unanimous consent to put into the record the Democratic staff report of May 6, 2014, no evidence of White House involvement or political motivation in IRS screening of tax-exempt applicants.
Absolutely, without objection, so ordered.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Koskinen, why you are serving our country at this point in time is beyond me, but thank you on behalf of all of us, because you are a sterling example of what we do need in this country, in government, and that is someone who knows exactly what they're doing, is not going to be bullied, and is going to state the facts as they see them. Now, let us start from the very beginning in this timeline. Based on the emails we have obtained, Ms. Lerner's hard drive crashed on June 13, 2011. Is that not so?
Yes.
All right, June 13, 2011. Her first indication, the first time she was informed by IRS employees in Cincinnati that they were using inappropriate search terms, did not happen until after her computer crashed. Is that not true?
That's correct.
And what date was that?
That's a week or two thereafter.
It was June 29, 2011. So June 13th, it crashes. June 29th, she is informed that they may be using inappropriate search terms. And the congressional investigation and the Inspector General's audit also did not start until after the computer crashed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
So I just want to make sure I have this clear. Ms. Lerner's computer crashed before she was informed that the IRS employees in Cincinnati were using inappropriate search terms, and before there was any congressional or Inspector General investigation.
That's correct. And we also have emails from April 11th in 2011 forward, because apparently she archived materials on her hard drive but kept emails in her email account, which did not go down with her hard drive.
And along with my colleague to my left, who was talking about the system that exists now, when you archive in the IRS right now because you don't have the data ability, because you don't have the $30 million invested, you actually have to print emails. It has to be determined that an email is appropriate and necessary to be archived, and it has to be printed. Is that correct?
That's correct.
That's how archaic it is. All right, so let's move on to the hearing last Friday. Some of the Republican members there sprung a document on you that you had not reviewed beforehand. They argued that Chairman Camp had sent a letter to the IRS on these exact issues 10 days before Ms. Lerner's computer crashed, and therefore, as Representative Roscom said, Chairman Camp sent a letter on this whole issue, and then 10 days later, so think about the duration of 10 days. 10 days is the ability to panic within the IRS, reflect, plan, talk, and execute, and there was a crash 10 days after the Chairman's letter. Now, I have a copy of the Chairman's letter here. You've probably had an opportunity to review it. June 3, 2011. And as I understand it, the question that was asked by the Chairman of the Ways and Means Committee to the then Commissioner was whether donations to a 501c4 were taxable gifts and if a gift tax return should be filed. So there already is law that says it asserts the applicability of gift taxes to 501c4 donations. And in his own letter, he says it's unsettled area of tax law, but he further notes that it has been applied in some cases. Is that not what the gist of that letter was all about?
That is correct. It was about the application of the gift tax laws to C4 organizations.
All right. So the letter had nothing to do with the issue of 501c4s and inappropriate terms being used to identify certain organizations.
It did not mention inappropriate terms at all, as far as I recall.
All right. I yield back.
I thank the lady for yielding back. We now go to the gentleman from Utah, Mr. Chaffetz.
I think the
Would the gentleman hold off on the time? I apologize. I'd like to ask unanimous consent so that it's in with Ms. Spear that the June 16, 2014 majority staff report be placed in the record without objection so ordered. It is titled, How Politics Led to the IRS to Target Conservative Tax-Exempt Applicants for Their Political Beliefs. I think it will go well with the minority report.
Mr. Chairman,
this is going to be some record.
It is going to be some record. Actually, Mr. Commissioner, we looked at the Rule 11, and it turns out what was cited was the audio-video in proceedings. So we're going to have to figure out how that applies too.
Rule 11K4, Mr. Chairman.
That's what we're looking at.
Mr. Chairman, could I ask that this letter from the Chairman of Ways and Means to Doug Shulman be—
Of course, that will be placed in the record. Mr. Chaffetz is recognized.
Thank the Chairman. My understanding is that the backup of emails was only lasted for 6 months. That's correct?
Yes, it's actually a disaster recovery system, and it backs up for 6 months in case the entire system goes down.
And that was in place in 2011?
That was the rule in 2011, policy.
So when Lois Lerner figured out on June 13th that her computer crashed, and there have been emails showing that she was going to great lengths to try to get that recovered, why didn't they just go to that 6-month tape?
Because that 6-month tape is a disaster recovery tape that has all of the emails on it and is a very complicated tape to actually extract emails for. But I have not seen any emails to explain why they didn't do it. So it would be difficult, but I don't know why they didn't.
But you said that the IRS was going to extraordinary lengths to give it to the recovery team, correct?
That's correct. That's correct.
But it's backed up on tape.
For 6 months, yes.
And that was within the 6-month window. So why didn't you get them off the backup?
All I know about that is that the backup tapes are disaster recovery tapes that put everything in one lump, and extracting individual emails out of that is very costly and difficult. And it was not the policy at the time.
Did anybody try?
I have no indication that they did.
So you have multiple emails showing that she was trying to recover this. It's the testimony of the IRS that they were trying desperately. In fact, you got a forensic team to try to extract this. You went to great lengths. You made a big point over last week about all the efforts you're going through, but they were backed up on tape and you didn't do it?
As far as I know, they did not. But they did have, as I noted, the email. She had 3 months' worth of emails at that time, going from April, or 2 months, from April.
That would have been fortuitous with the 6-month backup available, and we need to explore this, Mr. Chairman. Did I hear you right in the answer to Mr. Lynch that when the Treasury Inspector General was doing their work, that they were unaware that her email had crashed?
This is last summer? Or?
No, the question that Mr. Lynch just asked here.
Yeah, he asked whether the Inspector General, when they did their review of the determination process, was aware that her email had crashed, and I said I do not think they were.
So the Inspector General is trying to get to the bottom of this matter, and nobody informs them that her computer had crashed and that there were emails lost?
Not to my understanding, no. I'm not.
Were they withholding information from the Inspector General?
I wasn't there. I don't know what the Inspector General has access to all emails. He has access to any records he would like, and I have no indication that anybody did not provide him all of the records.
Did they ask for the Lois Lerner emails?
I have no idea. I was not there then.
Do you think it's unreasonable for us to ask that question?
I beg your pardon. You could ask the Inspector General. That would be fine.
We plan to. June 3rd, 2011, I'm glad you brought this up because Dave Camp did ask on page 2 the names, titles, and divisions and/or officers of any and all individuals who were involved or contributed to the decision to investigate whether taxpayer contributions to 501c4 organizations should be subject to gift rules. It goes on and talks about, actually before that, organizations will trigger an IRS audit based on the political activities of an organization. May 14th, that was in 2011. He's asking for all these emails. Why wasn't it brought to the attention of the committee that all of her emails were not available back then?
At that time?
Yeah.
I have no idea. I was not there at that time.
May 14th, 2013, also asked for those emails, didn't get a response. You have a subpoena from the United States Congress. And I recognize you personally weren't there, but I don't understand why the IRS wasn't diving into this to figure out. This is August of 2013. This committee issues a subpoena asking for her emails. It was known years before that some of her emails were gone. Correct?
Yes. Obviously, people knew in 2011 that there had been a crash.
When you came and testified on March 26th, did you know, or should you have reasonably known, that you did not have all of her emails?
I did not know.
Did you think you had all the emails?
At that point, I hadn't. My understanding was that they were reviewing the entire process to find out where the emails might be. I had no idea whether we had more or less.
So you didn't know if we had them all?
At that time.
At that time, March 26th.
All I knew was that they were investigating and we were going to provide all the emails we had. And that's what we're in the process of doing.
But did you or did you not know that you had all the emails?
I did not have any idea one way or the other.
Then why did you say,
I said
we can find
Lois Lerner's emails? And we did find them, and we're producing.
Did you find all of what percentage of them? Are we supposed to ask you which percentage? I mean, is that not clear?
At that
when I asked you?
At that point, I would have told you we're going to give you 100% of the emails we have, and that's what we're going to do.
See, now you're qualifying it. You had reason to know. For years, you had reason to know.
I haven't been there for years. I've been there for 5, 6 months.
You had reason to know. This is a hot investigation. You had reason to know that there was a problem, and you did nothing to indicate there was a problem. Correct?
Gentleman's time has expired, but you may answer.
Pardon?
You may answer.
Yes. I did not indicate at that time because I did not know the nature of the problem.
But you thought that there might be a problem.
Gentleman's time has expired.
If the Chairman, if he will please answer that question, did you or did you not think that there was a problem?
The gentleman's time has expired. Commissioner, you may answer that last question.
No, I have testified before that at that time I did not know the nature of the problem. All I knew there was a question being investigated.
I thank the gentleman, and I apologize, but time is up. We now go to the gentlelady from Illinois, Ms. Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Commissioner, good to see you here. Thank you for coming on such short notice. You know, it's really amazing to me to read that IRS requires employees to print and file emails that they decide are relevant to the official record, or that the IRS does not necessarily think that all emails are part of the official record that's relevant to the Federal Records Act. Email is critical, and I really feel like it's absolutely unacceptable that a government agency with such a critical public mission cannot produce emails requested during an investigation. But what's troubling to me is that this is not an issue with just the IRS, but is in fact government-wide. It's also not just with this administration. I'm looking at a report, a GAO report that is entitled National Archives and Selected Agencies Need to Strengthen Email Management, dated June of 2008. That basically addresses the inadequate email preservation procedures across government. And Mr. Chairman, I'd like to ask unanimous consent that this report be inputted into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you. Mr. Commissioner, I'd like to hear what steps you've taken or plan to take to ensure better electronic records keeping at the IRS going forward.
Long before this arose, I asked earlier this spring when I arrived for us to take a look at what it would take to develop an email system that was much easier to search. Right now, as I've noted, if you want to see anything from 90,000 employees, you've got to go to 90,000 hard drives. I was told more recently that we had looked at creating, in effect, a broader space server that would allow us to preserve emails, and that's the $10 to $30 million cost. We are reviewing that. We're also going to review whether we can move for the National Records Act from a paper system to an electronic system, but that's part of the upgrade of the email system.
Thank you. On June 17th, the National Archives and Records Administration sent a letter to the Office of Records and Information Management at the IRS regarding the loss of Ms. Lerner's emails. Is that correct?
It's my understanding. I have not seen the letter.
Okay. So what they're required to do, the National Archives and Records Administration is required to request a report of investigation from any agency that has an unauthorized disposal of Federal records. Is that correct?
That's my understanding.
It turns out that these requests from the archives are very commonplace among Federal agencies, and according to the National Archives, they sent 92 similar requests to Federal agencies during the Bush administration. Were you aware of that?
I was not.
You know, I believe that the Federal agencies should take these inquiries from the archives very seriously. Will you cooperate with their requests for the IRS to further investigate this matter?
We will be delighted to do that. We cooperate with all investigations.
And what steps has the IRS already taken to understand the circumstances around the loss of Ms. Lerner's documents?
I've testified at some length that we've reviewed all of the emails of Ms. Lerner and all emails subject to the search terms of the custodians that we've been working with to reconstitute as many emails as possible, and we've provided or will provide 24,000 of those emails.
So would it be accurate to say that in April, when you found out that some of the emails had been lost, that your understanding was that the team was still going to try to recover as many of those emails that had been lost from her crashed hard drive, but that they would be located in other people's systems, hard drives? For example, if she sent an email from her to another IRS official, that you could probably recover that email that was lost when her hard drive crashed because it still existed somewhere else. Is that correct?
That's correct. If it was in the other email of one of the 82 custodians, and those were selected because they were the most, they were the operatives working in the exempt organization area.
So in April, when you found out that her hard drive had crashed and it was unlikely that you would be able to recover from the lost emails, the IRS and the appropriate people, technical people in IRS, were still trying to recover as many of those lost emails as possible in one of those 82 other repositories, correct?
Correct. And we're also continuing to produce her emails post the crash, the 43,000 that we're committed to produce.
Okay, thank you. The IRS previously proposed reallocating $180 million in agency funds to sustain and replace its IT infrastructure. Is it fair to say that these longstanding financial and budgetary issues have contributed to the current records retention challenges at the IRS?
It is true. It's our challenge of, as I say, we're still moving people off Windows XP onto Windows 7.
Thank you. I'm almost out of time. I just want to thank you so much for your continued public service. I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
I thank the gentlelady. We now go to the gentleman from Michigan, Mr. Walberg.
I thank the Chairman, and Mr. Koskinen, thank you for being here. You said several times that Lois Lerner was very concerned that her emails be found and was attempting to do above and beyond efforts to achieve that. Am I correct?
That's correct.
You probably then could understand why there are some who might conjecture that Lerner pled the Fifth, wrongly, but pled the Fifth because she felt to answer might incriminate her, and that incrimination could possibly come from the information that were in those emails. Could you understand that?
Yes, but I have no way of knowing what her concerns are as to what exposure she might have.
And we never will, at least at this point, unless some of those emails can be found, because it's interesting that that took place. Let me ask you, have you fired anybody on your staff that didn't give you enough information so that you would have made that statement more accurate for us about information contained in emails that you couldn't provide to us, but now we find out that people knew that emails had been lost but didn't tell you?
I have not fired anyone. No one in my staff that I'm aware of has committed any.
Nobody's been fired for not giving adequate information.
And there's no basis for considering
to answer accurately and correctly and fully to the Oversight Committee of Congress.
Yes, and in fact, the purpose of that hearing was to talk generally about the investigation. Great lengths of that hearing were spent about productions in response to the subpoena, and the Chairman and I talked at length about that. The Lois Lerner emails were then ultimately agreed upon.
Can you understand why there's anger out there about this situation?
I can understand people's concerns about the fact that we do not have
all the
knowing
information,
whether we have all of her emails. I think we, as I say, last week the White House and Treasury provided emails.
and why it's so difficult for us to get to the bottom of it, because there isn't much help coming. The President himself on May 15th said it's inexcusable, and Americans are right to be angry about it, and I'm angry about it. I will not tolerate this kind of behavior in any agency, but especially in the IRS, given the power that it has and the reach that it has into all of our lives. And he said, I'll do everything in my power to make sure nothing like this happens again by holding the responsible parties accountable. Someone much more astute than I once said that the ability or the power to tax is the power to destroy. We've seen that, Mr. Koskinen. Before you came and took your position, we've seen people with First Amendment liberties being targeted by the IRS, the agency with the power to destroy, and they attempted to do it. And now we can't get answers completely. Let me go on further with something that you said to me back on March 26th in a hearing, where you had indicated that you were trying to get to the bottom of the controversy, and you said, Congressman, just to make you comfortable, and I don't know if we can have that up on the screen, just to make you comfortable, know about, then that is my fault, because that means that I haven't created a culture where problems and issues get raised from frontline workers and go easily and freely to the top. Do you stand by your earlier statement to me on March 26th?
I do.
Are these issues still not getting raised?
These issues were raised over time. I've told you about that, and we produced a public record discussing all of those. So I'm satisfied that in regard to this issue,
how many hard drives fail annually at the IRS?
I noted that since January 1st, 2,000 have failed this year alone.
In your professional career, how many times has your hard drive failed?
My hard drive failed once. The average for hard drive failures is 3 to 5%. That would mean that with 90,000 employees, we would expect that we would have between 2 and at 5%, we'd have 15,000.
Can it be really understood by our people then, involved in this greatest investigation in the IRS's history, that all of these people, several people in fact, and especially the one at the center of this investigation, has a mysterious experience of a hard drive crash on this information that probably caused Lois Lerner to plead the Fifth?
I don't know if you can say probably or not, and I will tell you it's not a mysterious crash. As I say, we've had 2,000.
This is mysterious for the American people. They don't understand it. They're angry. We need to get to the bottom of it. And frankly, I think there is all sorts of prevarication going on, stonewalling, and I'm very disappointed in that. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. We now go to the
Can I ask unanimous consent to simply enter into the record the op-ed from the Chicago Tribune yesterday, more smoke at the IRS, and not only from the hard drives?
Without objection, so ordered. We now go to the gentleman from Nevada for 5 minutes.
This hearing has been quite an embarrassment. For over a year now, Republicans have alleged that the IRS was engaged in a conspiracy directed by or on behalf of the White House to target its political enemies. But neither this committee nor the Inspector General has identified any evidence to back up this allegation. The whole charade, and Mr. Chairman, you say that we're not allowed to ask about the motives of other members, then how about asking about the motives of the hearing itself, the integrity of the hearing itself, the fact that the Chairman has continued to conclude the outcome without allowing the information to be presented in an impartial and complete way so that the members can do our job as we are elected to do. And this is a serious committee that has serious responsibilities. And I've said before that I want to get to the bottom of things, that there was wrongdoing at the IRS, and that we should fix it. But we can't fix it when the House Republicans continue to establish unfair, unsubstantiated, and unfounded allegations against what we do have, which are the facts. So you may be entitled to your own opinion, but you're not entitled to your own facts. Commissioner, have you, since you've been in this position, identified any evidence that IRS employees were part of a conspiracy to intentionally target the President's political enemies?
I'm not aware of any evidence.
Thank you.
That's it.
This is the same answer that we've received now from 41 other witnesses interviewed by this committee, including senior officials at the IRS, the Treasury Department, and the Department of Justice. The senior group manager in Cincinnati told us that it was his employees who first came up with the inappropriate screening criteria in an attempt to treat similar cases consistently. Is that your understanding of how that process came about?
That's my understanding, although I would say I haven't done any independent investigation.
This employee told us that he is a conservative Republican. In fact, none of the 41 individuals told the committee that the White House directed, suggested, or even knew about their conduct when it was going on. The Inspector General, Russell George, told us the same thing, that he identified no evidence of White House involvement. He confirmed that IRS employees in Cincinnati, and I quote, developed and implemented inappropriate criteria, unquote. Is that your understanding as well?
That's my understanding from what I've read in the newspapers and heard in hearings. I have not myself independently determined that.
When the Inspector General testified before the Ways and Means Committee on May 17, 2013, the Inspector General was asked by Ranking Member Sandy Levin whether he had found any evidence of political motivation in the selection of the tax-exempt applicants. In response, the Inspector General answered, "We did not, sir." Commissioner, do you have any reason to doubt the Inspector General's findings?
I do not.
In addition to all of these findings, on June 18, 2014, the White House sent a letter to Ways and Means Chairman Dave Camp. This letter explained that the White House also searched its records and did not identify any emails between Ms. Lerner and any member of the Executive Office of the President from January 2009 to 2011. I ask unanimous consent to enter this letter from the White House dated June 18, 2014.
Without objection, so ordered.
Allegations that the White House directed or subliminally coerced the IRS to target applicants for tax-exempt status are unfounded. And I hope that we put these reckless accusations to rest and finally begin focusing on the facts. I agree, one statement that I agree with the other side about, the public is upset. Part of the reason they're upset is the behavior of the chairman and this committee of how they have politicized this issue. When I listen to my constituents, what they tell me, Mr. Chairman, is that they're sick and tired of this process being used against them. We are one nation, and it's time for us to act.
I thank the gentleman. I now ask unanimous consent that the article dated February 4th of this year by Josh Hicks be placed in the record, in which it shows that the bonuses paid to IRS employees in fiscal year 2012 were $89 million as opposed to $10 million it would take to maintain critical documents. With that, we go to the gentleman from Arizona, Mr. Gosar.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate the gentleman's comments prior to me. I really want to ask you, do you understand really the gravity of what America feels in regards to the IRS?
Yes, I think if the question goes in the earlier one about people being upset about the IRS using inappropriate criteria, any indication that the IRS is anything other than apolitical are issues that are serious, that we need to address, and that I am committed to addressing.
I love that. Are you aware that in the articles of impeachment of Richard Nixon, in Articles 2, item number 1, and let me quote this, he has actingly, personally, and through his subordinates and agents endeavored to obtain through the Internal Revenue Service, in violation of the constitutional rights of citizens, confidential information contained in income tax returns for purposes not authorized by law, and to cause, in violation of the constitutional rights of citizens, income tax audits or other income tax investigations to be initiated or conducted in a discriminatory manner. Are you aware of that?
I do recall that from years
That's
ago.
why it's serious. I mean, because this is, I mean, if there's one thing that I can tell you, that's a dark light on our history. And we talked about missing data. Once again, missing data in the Richard Nixon tapes, some similarities. Once again, getting information. So another investigation that we have here, it takes a judicial watch to get information that was supposed to be given to this committee, yet not given to it. So you're aware of all this, right?
I'm not aware of the Judicial Watch problem.
You read the paper?
I do read the newspaper, yes.
Then you should be aware of it, because that's how we came about in regards to Benghazi and the Select Committee. That was the kicker, because we didn't have that information until we had Judicial Watch get it for us. So let's go back to the mindset here, because I'm a dentist impersonating a politician, and you are an attorney, right?
I'm an attorney, you're right. Gave up practice years ago.
Well, but you know, the fundamentals never leave you, right?
I would hope so.
And you're also a businessman?
Yes, I spent 20 years in the private sector.
So when we have a problem, and you came into this forest fire, I'm going to call it, you had your eyes wide open, right?
Yes.
So you knew you were going to have lots of scrutiny.
Yes, I understood that this was a high-profile challenge.
So you'd really want to dot your I's and cross your T's, right?
Yes.
Dot your I's and cross your T's.
That's always actually been my approach to everything I've done in 45 years.
So in a big problem, you've also said that you have 90,000 employees, right?
Correct.
So obviously you divide and conquer the problem, right?
I'm not sure I'd approach it
So what
quite
you
that way.
do is you have people that you trust formulate battle plans in a consensus aperture, and then you hold them accountable, right?
Yes, but actually I've spent a lot of time going to the 25 largest offices, talking to 10,000 IRS employees, primarily frontline workers, to hear from them as well.
So let me ask you a question coming into this. Were you bothered by Lois Lerner's conduct? I mean, you had to know about it. Here's a lady that seeds a question in an audience. That's kind of odd, wouldn't you say?
It's not the normal way people would behave. I would think that's right.
Well, once again, you know, we're talking about the IRS, and we're seeding a question out there. That's really kind of odd. And what was your comment? What did you take for her comment sitting here where you sat and taking the fifth, but not really taking the fifth? What did you think about that? Was that kind of odd?
I didn't have any thoughts. She's got her own lawyers. I don't know her.
Is that, well, let me ask you this as an attorney. Is that typically how the Fifth Amendment is taken?
I'm not aware of the Fifth Amendment practices, whether that's the way it's done or not.
Have you seen anybody else take the fifth that way?
Actually, I don't think I've ever seen anybody else take the fifth.
Wow, that's kind of a nice scapegoat. Because that's really odd. I mean, I'm just a dentist, and I've seen a number of people take the fifth, and I've never seen anybody take the fifth like that. And that's pretty contentious. In fact, my good friend over here, Trey Gowdy, had a problem with the way she took the fifth. And I trust his interpretation of the fifth pretty well. But it seems to me that if you had this management style, you would know exactly the precipitant person who told you about the problem with the hard drive.
There are at least 5 different people who report to me about this situation. We have a major effort going on.
But once again, it seems if they're reporting to you, you're asking them a question and holding them responsible, right? So you should know. Do they all have the same task?
There are 4 or 5 people who are actually involved regularly in this production effort. I get information from several different people.
Now, my time has expired and I've run out of time. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. We now go to the gentleman from Tennessee, Mr. Deschalets.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Koskin, for appearing for us today. I know it's getting late and there's been a lot of repetition, but let's talk a little bit about revenues again. You had a discussion earlier about the problem with backing up emails in the IRS, and it was because why?
The problem is because basically the server, IRS servers can only hold so much data.
Okay, and the reason they haven't been upgraded?
Because I understand the cost.
Okay, and you had a number earlier that it would take to upgrade those systems.
To actually turn it into an electronic system with a broader server would be somewhere between $10 to $30 million, depending on, the software and what you wanted to do with it.
Now, the Chairman mentioned earlier how many bonuses were given by the IRS to its employees in 2012. Did you know what that number was?
I did not until I heard the Chairman say it.
So $89 million were given in bonuses to employees at the IRS just in 2012 alone. You've talked about how the IRS has been underfunded now for at least 4 years. If you want to extrapolate that math, I would say that we probably could have upgraded the equipment so the IRS could do a better job. Would you agree?
There are 90,000 employees, so at $89 million, it's less than $1,000 or about $1,000 an employee.
Did you know that the IRS...
We could fund a lot if we didn't pay any bonuses. We gave no pay raises, actually continue to shrink the organization, we'll have more money. That's not exactly what you would design as the best way to organize the agency.
Did you know that $1 million in bonuses were given to IRS employees who owed back taxes?
That issue has come up more recently, and we actually have a program, and we're negotiating an agreement with the union because we have a commitment that every IRS employee will be current in their taxes, and even if you're 3 or 5 days late, you get a letter of admonishment.
You probably wouldn't do that for the rest of America, though, would you?
Would I hold everybody to paying their taxes on time? Pardon?
The same standards as yours? You would give bonuses to people for not paying taxes?
As we go forward, anyone who willfully doesn't comply with our
going
rules.
forward, all right.
Okay, won't get a bonus, and we've negotiated that with the union.
Okay. I don't think that necessarily sets well, but that's fine. Do you think that the IRS improperly targeted conservative groups?
My understanding is what I know, and I support the IG's report that said in his report improper criteria were used. The issue has been whether that then turns into targeting or not, the earlier reference to the Washington Post. But the report itself says improper criteria were used, and we have taken all of the IG's recommendations, accepted them, and are implementing them. So our goal is for this not to happen again.
During the hearing in March, you testified that you had never referred to the IRS as targeting. The Washington Post found that this statement was also not true. Do you want to revise that statement?
No, they found an occasion once in the past where I had used the word targeting once. They also noted that the IG had himself used the word targeting, and my point was the IG report says improper criteria. But once I did use the word targeting, I've now mentioned it in this criteria again. But again, the IG's report was improper criteria. Either way, my point very strongly has been from the start, the American public deserves to feel that there will not be improper criteria used, that people will not be selected for any reason other than
on how to say that? Did anyone ever coach you to say it that way as opposed to targeting? Does it sound more palatable?
No, that's
no one ever coached you?
No, that's what the IG report says.
So no one at all ever told you not to call the IRS conduct targeting?
Nobody tells me what to say. I actually am responsible for what I say. People talk about a lot of different things. The IG report said inappropriate criteria were used. That's why I referred to it in that hearing.
So you're the kind of guy that believes leadership starts at the top?
I believe it starts at the top, and I believe that the leader is held accountable for what happens in his agency.
So the IRS acted inappropriately. We can't get to the bottom of this. We have lost emails. Do you think it's time that we ask for a select committee or a special prosecutor?
No.
You wouldn't? Why not?
There are now 7 investigations going on. My position has been that once we get somebody to write a report, and particularly in this case where the IG completes his review and issues a report on this very issue, we can all then decide what the appropriate next step is. To have yet another investigation start, especially while the IG is going forward, seems to me a waste of money, as I've said
You're
in
the
the
face
past.
of the IRS right now, and right now that face doesn't look too good. Don't you think it would be better to clean the image of the IRS for the people who are sitting and watching this hearing tonight?
We'll clean the image of the IRS when we hear from the Inspector General and see whether he finds that there was any malfeasance at all.
Yeah. Okay. Well, my time has expired, and I think that we owe the people a little better than what we're seeing here.
I thank the gentleman. We now go to the gentleman from South Carolina, Mr. Gowdy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Commissioner, you're an attorney. Can you explain for our fellow citizens what the phrase spoliation of evidence means?
I have no idea what that means.
Well, I'm going to help you with it. Okay? Spoliation of evidence is when a party fails to preserve evidence. There's a negative inference that the jury can draw from their failure to preserve the evidence. You with me? If you destroy documents, the jury can infer that those documents weren't going to be good for you. If you failed to keep documents, the jury can infer that those documents were not going to be good for you. You've heard the phrase spoliation of evidence, haven't you?
I can't recall ever hearing it.
It's true in administrative hearings, civil hearings, criminal hearings.
I practiced law once 45 years ago, gave it up for Lent one year, and never went back.
All right. Well, let me tell you what you would have found if you had stuck with it. When a party has a duty to preserve evidence or records and they fail to do so, there is a negative inference that is drawn from their failure to preserve the evidence. It's common sense, right? If you destroyed something, the jury has a right to infer that whatever you destroyed would not have been good for you, or else every litigant would destroy whatever evidence was detrimental to them. Agreed?
I'm not sure. I think if you destroy the evidence and people could prove it, it wouldn't be a good thing for your defense.
Well, no, it's worse than that. The jury can draw, and they're instructed, they can draw a negative inference.
All right.
And that's true if a taxpayer is being sued by the IRS administratively, civilly, or prosecuted criminally, and they fail to keep documents, the jury can draw a negative inference from the fact that they didn't keep receipts or emails or documents. So if it's true and applies to a taxpayer, it ought to apply to the IRS as well. Agreed?
Is this a trial? Is this a jury? Is that what you're
I said administrative, civil, or criminal. If you want to go down that road, I'm happy to go down it with you, Commissioner. In fact, I'm glad you mentioned it. You have already said multiple times today that there was no evidence that you found of any criminal wrongdoing. I want you to tell me what criminal statutes you've evaluated.
I have not looked at any.
Well, then how can you possibly tell our fellow citizens that there's no criminal wrongdoing if you don't even know what statutes to look at?
Because I've seen no evidence that anyone consciously.
Well, how would you know what elements of the crime existed? You don't even know what statutes are at play. I'm going to ask you again. What statutes have you evaluated?
I think you can rely on common sense that nothing I have seen.
Common sense. Instead of the criminal code, you want to rely on common sense. No, Mr. You can shake your head all you want to, Commissioner. You have said today that there's no evidence of criminal wrongdoing. And I'm asking you what criminal statutes you have reviewed to reach that conclusion.
I have reviewed no criminal statute.
All right. So you don't have any idea whether there's any criminal conduct or not because you don't know the elements of the offense.
I have seen no evidence of wrongdoing.
Oh, well, that's very different from no evidence of criminal misconduct, Commissioner.
Well, it seems to me if you haven't done wrongdoing, it'd be pretty hard to argue that you've had some criminal violation if you did.
Well, what did Lois Lerner mean when she said perhaps the FEC will save the day?
I have no idea
what did she say. What did she mean when she said we need a project, but we need to be careful that it doesn't appear to be per se political? You don't think that's a potential violation of 18242?
I have no idea if it.
Because you haven't looked at 18242, and you don't have any idea, Commissioner. You don't have any idea whether there's any criminal wrongdoing or not.
With regard to the production of the evidence, the production of Lois Lerner emails, I have seen no evidence of wrongdoing. What else went on?
Well, if there were, that would be a separate criminal offense.
What else went on with Lois Lerner, I've said in the past.
So what you're saying is you don't have any idea whether she engaged in criminal wrongdoing. You're just saying that you did not engage in any with respect to the emails.
I haven't seen any wrongdoing with regard to the production of Lois Lerner emails.
But you are not saying there was no criminal wrongdoing with respect to the targeting of conservative groups. I want want to be very clear. You're not saying that.
I've made no judgments.
So you disagree with the President when he says there's not a smidgen of corruption?
There are people who have been making judgments both sides about whether there were.
And you know what? I'm not one of those. I'm just simply saying we will never know because you didn't keep the evidence. The evidence was spoliated. And whether it's negligent, whether it's intentional, whether it's reckless, we still don't have the evidence, Commissioner.
Well, you have the evidence that there is no emails from the White House. You have all of the Treasury emails. So the basic premise that this was an argument in a conspiracy driven by the White House does not.
No, sir, you're wrong about that. You're wrong about that. That you're repeating a talking point from our colleagues on the other side that we're obsessed with the White House. It was Jay Carney who perpetuated the myth that it was 2 rogue agents in Ohio. It wasn't any of us. Was that accurate? Was that first initial line of defense that this is just 2 rogue agents in Ohio? Was that accurate, Commissioner?
Not that I know of.
All right, so that wasn't accurate, and that came from the White House. Who said there's not a smidgen of corruption? Who said that, Commissioner?
My understanding is that was the President.
Or it was the President. So that's Jay Carney and the President both inserting themselves into the IRS scandal. And you want to blame us for bringing the White House into it?
I haven't blamed you at all.
You just did, Commissioner. You just did.
Well, it's a good argument. All I said was the White House has revealed there were no Lois Lerner emails. Treasury has given you all of their emails. So to the extent that the argument was that Lois Lerner was conspiring and emailing back and forth, thus far I haven't seen any.
Well, you can be engaged in a conspiracy that doesn't include the White House.
Gentlemen.
Good. I think time's up. Right. Thank you, sir.
Well, I was wanting to let him go, but the guy beside me kept grabbing me.